All right, here is the beginning of it all. Ethan is my name. I am 29 and roughly a year and a half ago met Layla, an incredible woman. Layla's 27 and we have been inseparable since our first meeting. She is clever, humorous, everything I could ever wish for a mate. Her best friend Aiden was one thorn in our relationship that only appeared to get worse over time, despite her seeming perfection. Aiden, 28, has been Layla's ride or die from their college years. I knew they were close when we first started dating, but I assumed it was simply the usual best friend situation. First of all, I didn't care, though at least I try not to be the jealous type. I have always thought in respect of people's friendships and in allowing their space, but under Aiden, it's challenging. Over time, I began to notice that just friends between Layla and her companion lacked the clarity Layla had first suggested. The more time we spent together, the more I felt as though I was following along in their relationship, rather than being in one with Layla. One evening especially jumps out to me. It's honestly what set off the frustrating spiral. Just the two of us, Layla and I, had intended to spend a peaceful evening in. All day I had been looking forward to, considering it would be an opportunity to unwind and spend some quality time with her. Then, just before I was ready to go over, Aiden calls. Layla's entire manner shifts in a second. She is now all thrilled since Aiden wants dinner, and our ambitions vanish exactly like that. She didn't even ask whether I wanted to join in. It felt as though I didn't really exist. It was also not a once occurrence. This continued to happen repeatedly. Not friends, they have these frequent meetings, dinners, movie evenings, late-night drives, the kind of stuff couples do. Layla would discount it every time I brought it up, saying, "Oh, it's just Aiden. You know how we are." And that is exactly the issue. I did know. She couldn't, or perhaps did not want, but I could see it clear-cut. All of it began to gather bit by bit inside of me. One evening, just the two of us were meant to be having this beautiful evening. Having everything ready, I thought it would be something unique. But Aiden surfaces once again shortly before we were meant to leave. Apparently, Layla felt she ought to be there for him since he had had a bad day. Sitting there, I felt as though I had been punched in the gut. On our date night, my partner was hurrying to console another man. I understand that friends have bad days. However, what about us? There then is the other stuff. Their behavior in front of me feels as though I am the third wheel. Their entire universe of inside jokes, shared memories, and body language leaves me lacking. That bothers me. Though I am meant to be the boyfriend, I feel like I am the only one attempting to fit into their small group. I thought I could first manage it. I told myself I was simply insecure, maybe overanalyzing, and it wasn't really important. Then, though, I became aware of other minor details that troubled me. Aiden texts Layla constantly, morning, noon, and late at night. Her phone buzzes with messages from him even now while we are together. Not only is it informal, but he calls her sweetheart and babe. One night, when I asked her about it, she only laughed and said, "Just how they talk." But it seemed strange. Since I am her boyfriend, should those kinds of pet names be reserved for me? Still, the late-night FaceTimes are the worst feature. More than once I've awakened to discover her speaking and laughing on the phone with him in the middle of the night. She would simply remark, "Aiden needed to talk," when asked about it, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Like most people, I began to question why he cannot call another buddy or even address his problems alone. Trust me, I know there are most likely folks reading this thinking, just chill, they're just friends. But when it seems like you are always the second pick, how do you remain cool? Layla and I are meant to be in a relationship. That is, between two persons, not three. I have done everything I could consider to be understanding. I tried to be encouraging, but there's only so much a person can take before they start feeling like a background actor in their own relationship. I've also neglected my own emotions. I feel as though I'm treading on eggshells now, trying not to come out as the jealous or controlling boyfriend. Eventually, though, my emotions should also count. Sometimes we're out. Aiden texts her something funny, and she spends the next 10 minutes laughing with him over her phone while I'm just seated there picking at my lunch. She stared at me as if I were asking for the world when I asked her at last whether she could put her phone away. And then arrived the turning point. We had been weeks preparing for this weekend trip. It was meant to be a romantic haven, just the two of us, something to look forward to. But a few days prior, Layla tells me Aiden told her about a concert the same weekend and invited her to go with him. She also asked me if we would postpone our trip so she might travel with him. I found it unbelievable. It went beyond the concert or even FaceTime and regular texting. It was about feeling as though I was always in second place, about feeling as though I was somehow vying for her attention, and about realizing that Aiden always came first, whatever I did. That weekend rescheduling request infuriated me afterward. Though I wanted to blow on her, I merely went for a long stroll to help me relax. I had to sort through it to figure out why my girlfriend felt it was acceptable to ignore our plans since her friend invited her to see a concert. I felt ashamed, as if all my tolerance and understanding had been turned around on me. How could she not be seeing what this was doing to me? When I returned, I aimed for a cool-headed discourse. Straight front, I told her how much this hurt, how it felt like Aiden was a third wheel in our relationship, and that it was sapping me. Even just for a weekend, I felt it was not too much to ask her to give us first priority. But she became defensive instead of genuinely listening. "Ethan, you knew Aiden was a major component of my life when we started dating," she stated. "Why are you suddenly trying to change me?" Her comments strike right at the core. Though I wanted to alter her, I had to feel as though our relationship counted. I wanted her to set limits, things that would make it abundantly evident where her loyalty were. Not that I was asking her to dump Aiden totally. All she did, though, was give it the impression that I was overreacting, that I was acting irrationally, for wanting to be her top concern. She then struck me with something almost broke me. "Aiden thinks you're being controlling," she added, staring at me as though astonished I wasn't understanding her side. For me, that was the instant everything started to fit. Here we were having a serious conversation about our relationship, and strangely Aiden's view fit her better than mine. I emphasized to her respect rather than control. Still, she was blind to it. She continued doubling down instead, arguing I was being illogical. She stated perhaps we were meant to be apart if I could manage her friendship with Aiden. That from her seemed like a kick to the belly. Though it left me feeling excluded, I had been doing everything I could to embrace her bond with Aiden. Apparently, though, none of that really counted. I was simply the jealous boyfriend with a problem, in her view. One more time I tried to explain that I simply wanted to make her feel valued. She called me poisonous for trying to change her, therefore discounting my worries. Following that conflict, things got tight. She began treating me silently, and I was left by myself with my thoughts, mentally running over everything. I kept wondering whether I was the one in error, whether perhaps I was too sensitive. Deep down, though, I understood this went beyond my fears. It was about being pushed aside in my own relationship. Nobody should have to live with this. Though I loved her, I couldn't get rid of the impression that I was engaged in a losing struggle. It was like my emotions didn't matter, like I was simply meant to be sitting there and dealing with it. I kept thinking about all the times I had made sacrifices, all the times I had tried to be patient and sympathetic, only to be told I was controlling or overreacting. Then our anniversary travel scheduled arose. We had scheduled this for months, a weekend free from all else just for us. I hoped it would allow us to reconnect and remind her of the reasons we were originally together. But she dropped even another bomb a few days prior. "Hey, so Aiden just discovered this band performing that weekend," she said. "He genuinely wants me to go with him. We both love them. Are there any ways we might postpone the trip? Change our anniversary trip to be for Aiden? If it didn't hurt so terribly, it was almost funny." At last, my tolerance ran short. Point blank, I asked her why Aiden cannot go to the concert alone himself or with someone else. Why had it to be her? Frustrated, she just looked at me and said, "You don't get it. We're quite fond of this band." Right then it struck me where I actually stood in her life, a once-in-a-lifetime event. Her top concern was not mine. Aiden always came first, no matter what I did or how patient I tried to be. Calmly as I could, I informed her this wasn't right. I told her I was weary of feeling as though I was in a battle with her closest friend, and that always being pushed to the side was tiring me. She dismissed me, though, stating I was overreacting and exaggerating over nothing. "Aiden is my best friend," she remarked. You understood that when we first started dating. Why do you suddenly want things changed? Taking a long breath, I informed her I wasn't trying to change her. She should have clearly indicated where her allegiance lay and set limits. I wanted to be in her life, like our relationship counted, like she valued me. She couldn't either see my side. She insisted on defending her behavior, claiming that I was the one causing trouble and that I was the one with the problem. So at last I issued an ultimatum to her. I told her perhaps we weren't meant to be together if she couldn't establish limits with Aiden or make me a priority. To say that stung. Though I couldn't keep acting as though everything was fine when it obviously wasn't, I didn't want to lose her. Once and for once, I needed her to decide if she was ready to give our relationship top importance or not. It seemed to be the only alternative left. Her answer, though, was anything from encouraging. Startled and unable to believe I was saying these things, she just gazed at me. Then she laughed angrily and accused me of giving her an ultimatum, as if I were somehow being unjust. She said softly, "You're asking me to change who I am." I gave my head a shake. "No, I want you to see how this is impacting me." I asked her to meet me midway. She looked down at her hands, and for a while I thought she might really give it some thought. She groaned then, "Aiden thinks you're being controlling." That was the last straw. Even in this, Aiden's viewpoint had more weight for her than my own. In that instant, I realized nothing I said would make her change of perspective. I thus informed her I needed some time to consider what I wanted from this relationship and to clear my head. That evening, as I left her apartment, I experienced a range of emotions, including annoyance, bitterness, and grief. She simply couldn't or wouldn't see my side after all I had done to try. I felt as though I was leaving someone who had never really been on my side instead of someone meant to be my companion. Though I had no idea what would happen next, one thing was very evident. I could not continue like this. Though I had done everything I could, perhaps it was time to realize we were not meant to be together if she refused to meet halfway. The next several days were trying. Layla and I didn't talk much, and when we did, it was tense, as though a great wall separating us, neither of which could be broken down. Maybe the quiet would provide us both time to cool off, to fully consider our wants. All it did, though, was give me more time to focus on all I had been putting up with, the times she had skipped me for Aiden, the way she dismissed my emotions, the way she appeared to see my existence in her life as optional. This sinking sensation, a persistent idea in the rear of my mind suggesting I was losing her to him, persisted. But I wasn't sure if there was anything actual behind it, or if my own insecurity was speaking. I continued going over the reschooling request for an anniversary trip, and every time the treachery sank farther. Layla dropped over one evening, and I wanted to spend one last heart-to-heart with her. Just honesty, no accusations or fury. I told her how much it stung to feel like a spectator in my own marriage, and how Aiden seemed to have a hold on her that transcended friendship. I wanted her to give us first priority, at least attempt to see things from my point of view, not ask her to change. She seems to be listening for a moment. She sat silently, nodding sometimes, and I began to wonder whether we were headed somewhere. She said, "Ethan, I get that this is tough for you, but Aiden is family to me. He has been at my side through some of the worst years. Hearing that hit me like a punch. I cannot simply ignore him since you are insecure. I had exposed my heart, and now here she was, shrinking what I experienced to anxiety." She still couldn't comprehend that it was about the way she gave Aiden top priority, rather than only about him. Still trying to cool off, I added, "I'm not asking you to discount him. I simply want some limitations set in place." Her answer was frigid. "If we are together, I want to feel like I am significant to you, like I am not just here to fill time until he needs you again." It was like she had shut a door in my face. "Ethan, if you can't accept me having a strong friendship with him, then maybe this isn't going to work out." I had been swallowing my pride, putting aside my own discomfort, leaning over backward to try to grasp her relationship with Aiden, and here she was, making it sound like I was the problem. I was worn out, and of course the one who compromises constantly. At last, I just turned to her and said, "Layla, I don't believe I can keep doing this. I want a companion who wants to work with me, respects my emotions, and does not make me feel like an alien. I don't think I'm asking for too much. Yet, she turned it around on me once more instead of listening. Ethan, this is exactly who I am. Aiden is very much a part of my life. I am not going to change that just because you find it unpleasant. That was the turning moment. The weight of all the times I had stayed silent, all the nights I had brushed off, expecting it would get better, only to be told over and over that my emotions had no bearing. I inhaled deeply, the kind of breath you take when you know you are about to decide on something that would fundamentally alter everything. Okay, Layla, I murmured, my heart tearing yet my voice firm. Maybe you are right if Aiden is that vital to you. She seemed startled, as though she hadn't expected me to say anything at all. Maybe this isn't going to work out. Her lips opened and closed several times, but no words came out. She said, "So, you're just going to give up?" After a protracted silence, "Give up, please?" Feeling a flash of irritation, I said, "Layla, I am not giving up. Every stride of the way I have been battling for our connection. Still, I feel as though I am the only one fighting. You want no limits and you want me to not be a priority. Besides, what else am I meant to do?" Her quiet spoke to me everything. She refused to make any modifications for us or compromise, and as much as it hurt to confess, I knew I couldn't continue to put my own happiness last to keep her in my life. She reached out as if she wanted to say something, but then she withdrew. I got up. Though I could see the conflict in her eyes, I understood she had to make this choice for her personally. She either wasn't ready to commit the necessary work or she was. My voice softening, I replied, "Look, Layla. Love you. I want to be with you. I can't continue to feel like this, though. Maybe we need some time apart if you're not ready to meet me halfway." She turned away, tears filling her eyes, but she said nothing. I waited, praying she would have second thoughts and see what this was doing to me at last. Nevertheless, the quiet persisted and I knew my response. That evening, I left her place in a weird mix of grief and relief. Though I loved her, I could not continue to subject myself to this. I deserved someone who appreciated me and recognized me as more than simply a token actor. The days following that blended together. I kept hoping she would reach out to let me know she wanted things worked out and had thought about it, but all I received was quiet. Though it hurt, it also provided all I needed to know. She would have battled for us if she genuinely wanted to be with me. She would have made an effort. Then I received a message from her just as I was beginning to believe that perhaps this was really finished. "Hey, would you be willing to chat?" Though brief and straightforward, it left me feeling both hopeful and terrified. Though another part of me still cared, part of me wanted to dismiss it to avoid revisiting past hurts. I accepted then, and the following day we convened at a subdued coffee shop. She looked different, more subdued, as if she had been thinking a lot. She murmured, "Ethan, I'm sorry," as soon as we took seats. Hearing those comments felt like healing for my spirit. "I have been considering what you said and now see that I have not been fair to you." She seemed to know at last. I did not, however, want to raise too early hopes. Her voice trembling, I listened as she stated, "I never meant to make you feel second place," telling me she had been taking me for granted and had not understood how much her actions were hurting me. I was so used to leaning on Aiden that I didn't pause to consider how it looked or how it made you feel. I don't want to lose you, Ethan." I inhaled deeply, felt her words weigh down. She seemed really sincere, but I wasn't sure whether that was enough. "Layla, I really do appreciate the apology, but we cannot simply correct with words here." She nodded, her face solemn, "And I needed to know that you were ready to make adjustments to prove I mattered to you." "I know. I wish to put things right. I am ready to be more sensitive to your emotions and to set limits with Aiden. I want you to not feel as though you are vying for my attention. It was a lot to absorb, and part of me still felt guarded. We should be in line. Too many times I had suffered, and trust is not something you can recover overnight." But when I looked at her, I sensed her fragility and genuineness. All I had wanted was for her to at last see things from my point of view. "Okay, slow," I replied, attempting to control my feelings. Let's do one step at a time. Though I would be ready to give this another try, I must see such adjustments. She stretched out, grabbing my hand, her eyes full of relief, and I had to feel like a top concern in your life. I appreciate you, Ethan. I had a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks as we walked out of the coffee shop, not wanting you down. Although I knew there was still much healing to do and it was not a guarantee, for now I was ready to give her, and us, another opportunity. It felt like we were on the same page as we strolled out onto the chilly, silent street. First in a long time. Following our conversation, things seemed to get better. Layla kept her word, at least initially. She tried to impose limits on Aiden, reducing the late-night calls and continual messaging. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. She felt as though she was at last giving our relationship top priority, and that she really knew how much her friendship with Aiden had been influencing me. Though unusual, it was a good sensation. We began spending more time together engaging in activities that reminded me of the reason I had first fallen in love with her. We seemed to be at last re-establishing something true, free from the shadow of Aiden. And Layla also looked to be quite delighted. She told me she was really appreciative of me giving her a second opportunity and laughed more and shared more. Even with all these developments, though, I couldn't get rid of a nagging sense deep down, a little but constant voice urging caution and moderation. Our trust was not completely rebuilt, and there was a part of me that continued to worry she would relapse to her previous behaviors. Though trust is something you cannot just put back into place, I wanted to believe her and in us. It takes time, and if she were ready to keep up her effort, I was ready to give her that. One evening, Layla and I were making dinner at her house when things unexpectedly changed. All evening, she had been in a wonderful mood. She told me about her day and cracked jokes about my less-than-perfect food. It was really pleasant and comfortable. Her phone buzzed, suddenly, just as we were seated to eat. She first disregarded it, but later it buzzed once more. Once more here. Her face changed, her expression from laid back to tight. She looked at her phone, then flipped the phone face down fast. For a moment, I saw Aiden's name flash on the screen. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to be laid back. She hesitated, her gaze flickering between her phone and me. "Sure, it is good. He only is going through something. Later on, I'll call him back." Her voice made me uncomfortable. She was attempting to dismiss it, but I sensed that whatever was happening with Aiden had rocked her. The tension returned, and it felt as though we were just where we had begun. Her phone buzzed every few minutes, so she remained unfocused for the remainder of the evening. I tried to ignore it and concentrate on us, but the uncertainty crept in. I resolved it that evening as I was leaving her house. "Layla, are you sure everything is in order? You may talk to me if something is going on." She glanced at me, and for a second I thought she would be opening up. She then merely grinned, a little worn-out smile. "It's okay, Ethan." Indeed. I didn't press her, but the doubts ate at me as I walked home. I have things under control. This felt all too familiar, me left in the background waiting while Aiden's diverted her attention. Maybe I was overanalyzing things, I told myself. She was simply trying to assist a friend. Still, the nervousness would not go away. The next 3 days went unremarkably, but Layla's conduct changed. She was far off and unfocused even. Saying she had something to take care of, she would call off last-minute plans or cut off our chats. She would apologize each time, claiming she would make it up to me, but the excuses grew stacking. The advancement we had felt like it was slipping through my fingers, and I could feel myself drawing back to guard against re-injury. Then one weekend we had scheduled to spend the entire day together, just us, without interruptions. Looking forward to it, I hoped it would be an opportunity for us to reconnect and maybe clear some of our uncertainty. But she called, seeming disoriented, 1 hour before we were scheduled to meet. "Hey Ethan, sorry, but something came up. I owe Aiden assistance with a family matter," she said, her voice strained and distracted. "Kind of urgent." Though I tried to chill off, I felt a surge of irritation. "All right," I answered, attempting to hide the letdown in my voice. "I understand," she assured me. We still had some time together, and she promised to be back later in the evening. Still, my irritation mounted as the hours passed. The sun had long fallen, and from her I had not heard a word. I finally asked her if everything was good by text. Her answer was brief and virtually contemptuous. Sure, apologize. Currently here with Aiden. That was it. No apology, no explanation, just a plain rough day text. Today has been challenging. Sitting by myself in my flat, I sensed my last piece of tolerance erasing. Though it felt like we were right back where we had started, I had been more than just understanding or ready to compromise. Given the chance to prove she cared, I would have put my emotions on the line, and here I was, once more, alone. I was done by the time she called at last later that evening. She sounded worn out, as though she had had a hard, demanding day, but I couldn't find myself sympathetic. Rather, I experienced a flash of wrath, a frustration accumulated over much too long. "Ethan, I am really sorry," she started. "Today was just really strong. Aiden is going through a lot right now." "Layla," I interrupted, my voice colder than I meant. "Do you know how this feels? You find a way to put him first every time I let my guard down, every time I start to believe things would get better." She stopped, and I could sense her shame in her breathing. "I am aware of this as well," simply said Ethan. "He depends on me." I responded, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm not asking you to turn your back on him, Layla. Just once, though, I am asking you to put us first. Though it seems like nothing has changed, you assured me that things would." I could tell she wanted to say something, to defend herself, but she held back. She said, "I'm sorry, Ethan," after a lengthy silence. And then was the instant I understood the truth. Layla couldn't really let go of Aiden. He would always come first, whether she said anything or how many times she swore to change. Thinking of things differently made me feel like an idiot. Maybe this just isn't going to work, Layla," I whispered, every syllable weighting my chest. "I love you, but I cannot continue to do this. I cannot keep feeling as though I am vying with him for your time, your attention, and your love." On the opposite side, the quiet was intolerable. Her delicate, quivering breaths let me know she was crying. But this time I couldn't bring myself to console her. I was too tired of always being the one to make compromises. I was too depleted. "I'm sorry," she said in a whisper. "I never wanted to treat you badly." "Maybe not," I said, sounding empty. "Indeed you did, and I doubt I can keep acting as though everything is fine." We sat in quiet, each of us adjusting to what this implied. Like a weight had finally been taken off, I had an odd sensation of calm mingled with melancholy at a terrible cost. I whispered gently, "Goodbye, Layla." The finality of the phrase, laying between us like a stone. She answered, "Goodbye, Ethan," her voice hardly a whisper. I hung around, experiencing a weird mix of sadness and relief. Though that made no difference, I knew this was the correct decision. I deeply loved her, but I couldn't keep giving myself up for someone whose life could accommodate me or see me. Alone, while I sat there, I experienced a slow calm. The storm had passed, and even though it had left me feeling naked and empty, I knew I would mend. I would find someone who could really see me in due course, someone who would make me feel like I mattered. Right now, though, there was only me. I would have to learn to be good with that. The days after that last talk with Layla were unusual and weighty. The silence was startling, as I had become so accustomed to her presence and to the continuous back and forth in our relationship. I would catch myself grabbing for my phone, half expecting a call or message, but nothing turned up. It was simply myself, with the subdued echo of memories hanging about like morning mist. Over the first few days, the agony was raw. I kept running over our final chat, her voice wait, the sound of her bidding farewell. Part of me questioned whether I had made a mistake, whether perhaps I could have hung on a little bit longer and battled a little more. But every time those ideas surfaced, I would remind myself of all the times I had been pushed aside, of the innumerable days and evenings I had spent feeling like a secondary concern. Deep down, I knew I had taken the correct decision, no matter how much it hurt. 1 week later, I was alone strolling across the park. We used to go there together, a location full of laughter and little events that had felt so solid, so real, back when we were happy. Those identical sights now felt different, like faded memories of a life I had left behind. Still, I also experienced a subdued sense of relief, even as the recollections ached. I was free from uncertainty, from the continual tug and pull of vying for her attention. At last, I was allowing myself time to recuperate. Over the course of the weeks, I began piecemeal reconstruction. I put myself into my work, caught up with former friends, and discovered fresh activities to be excited about. It felt odd at first, like though I was acting, just going through the motions. But gradually I started to like my own company and rediscover bits of myself I had neglected. Rising in the morning, I would feel a little lighter and more like me. One evening then, I received a text. Coming from Layla, just seeing her name on my screen caused a tsunami of feelings: sadness, resentment, nostalgia. Before opening the message, I gazed at it for some time. "Hey Ethan," said, "I hope you are doing well. I've been thinking about you rather a lot. I miss you." Reading such lines was like opening a long-closed sore. The anguish, the old pull of wanting to reach out to see whether perhaps things might be different this time, was felt. I knew better, however. Returning would simply mean going back over the same patterns, the same suffering that had caused us to distance ourselves. I was not going to get lost on that route. I had already walked it. I inhaled deeply, then answered, keeping my remarks brief but kind. "Hello, Layla. I'm doing good. I simply want to keep ahead. I wish you also well." She answered very instantly, her comments full of regret, telling me how much she wished she had handled things differently. She almost instantly responded. She also made hints about Aiden not being in her life as much anymore, and about her setting the limits I had once urged her to do. I had a brief flash of hope, a spark suggesting perhaps that we could start afresh, but almost as fast, I reminded myself of everything I had gone through, of the hurt and treachery that had persisted for so long. Although Layla's comments were consoling, they did not erase the reality that I had spent months feeling like a spectator in my own relationship, battling to be seen and respected. I said I liked her comments and thanked her for getting in touch. I did, however, also make it obvious that I had to stay on. Looking back would just resurrect past hurt. She seemed to grasp. However, her remark made me feel depressed. We sent a few more texts, concluding with a tone of subdued respect. Each of us knew that although we had once loved each other very much, we had also created grief that cannot be just forgotten. I set my phone down after that and experienced an unusual closure. It seemed as though a weight I had been bearing had at last dropped. Though I understood mending would still take time, I felt I could at last move forward without turning around. I concentrated on creating a life that felt true and complete, free from Layla over the next many months. Though hardly significant, I spent more time with my family, picked up new interests, and even went on a few dates. I was starting to appreciate the small pleasures once more and to feel anchored in a manner I hadn't experienced in a long time. One night, I was sitting by a bonfire with some friends, the stars brilliant above us, a light breeze dancing among the trees. We were laughing, sharing real, loving memories and storytelling. I had peace in that instant that I hadn't experienced in a very long time. I was not considering Layla, the agony of our split, or the emptiness that had persisted for so long. I was just here, right now, happy. Looking back, I saw that my time with Layla had imparted a lot of lessons about love, about limits, about the kind of respect and cooperation I need in a marriage. Though it had been a difficult course, it had strengthened and raised my awareness of myself. Now I knew I deserved someone who would see me, someone who would make me feel valuable without having to advocate for it. As it always does, life progressed forward. Although Layla's memories would periodically return, their weight would have changed. They were simply fragments of my past, markers of a trip that had molded but not defined me. A few months later, I was seated across from someone fresh in a little cafe. Maya was her name. We had first crossed paths via common friends. She was friendly, considerate, and had a laid-back attitude that relaxed me. We discussed everything: books, travel, dreams. and for the first time I sensed something change inside me, a soft warmth not felt in a long time. I became aware that I was not carrying any baggage or any leftover suffering while we drank our coffee and told tales. I was just there, receptive to whatever this new relationship could offer. Like a fresh start, it felt nice, and I was ready to find out where it would lead. That was the realization that moving on was about rediscovering myself, about finding delight in my own company before sharing it with someone else, not only about letting go of someone else. Layla was not the conclusion of my tale, but she had been a chapter in my life marked with love and suffering. I had a clean page now. I was continuing writing it. I felt at peace with where I had been and thrilled about where I was heading for the first time in a long time. And I realized I had at last returned to myself as I sat there, seeing Maya smiling across the table,